Right now, your health insurance bill might be getting a plot twist, and the next chapter could cost families a whole lot more. We're going to explain why what happens in Washington could heat up your premiums. Plus, Georgia's wage growth is shifting heading into the new year. We'll explain why economists are watching this trend closely. And when it comes to college aid, the state's report card has a surprising note in the margins. We'll show you what lawmakers spotted and why it could spark changes. This is The Take. Hello and welcome in. I'm Joe Ripley in for Chesley McNeil. This is The Take, where we go beyond the headlines and look at why and how stories are impacting your community. Experts will share what they know, and we'll have a little fun too. First, though, the fast-moving tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela are raising new questions about just how far military force can go without triggering a wider conflict. 21 maritime strikes have now been carried out against what the United States calls drug smuggling vessels, with the Trump administration insisting these actions fall within the rules of war. This includes a follow-up strike on an alleged drug-carrying boat in the Caribbean Sea back in early September. Earlier this week, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth defended his department's and the military's response.
I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do. And by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat.
All this raises the central question, and today, how do the laws of armed conflict actually apply here, especially when the U.S. says it is not at war? To help break all that down for us, we're now joined by Lori Blank, clinical professor of law at Emory University. Lori, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Help us define, Lori, the landscape here. What exactly are the rules of war, and when do they apply in the U.S. if the U.S. says it's not at war with Venezuela?
Yeah, so we have a lot of terms being thrown around in this conversation, but the bottom line here is that there is no armed conflict going on. There's not an armed conflict with Venezuela. There's not an armed conflict with drug cartels as yet unidentified entirely. And so while there is important conversation to be had about the rules that apply in wartime, about the proper conduct, moral, ethical, legal conduct in wartime, what we're talking about here is not war. So we're trying to, the conversation's layering things that really don't belong together.
Yeah, so Secretary Hegseth says the commander, Vice Admiral Bradley, in this case, did have complete authority to sink the vessel. What legal standards, Lori, determine whether that strike was justified?
So in this case, we're talking about the basic peacetime rules for dealing with drug smuggling and so on. And our Navy and our Coast Guard have decades of experience in dealing with this. They interdict vessels on the high seas. They seize the cargo. They seize the vessels. They've been doing this for a long time. So it's not entirely clear why that has been thrown out the window, so to speak, and a new approach of simply targeting the boats with lethal force has been imposed. There doesn't seem to be any legal basis for that.
And these actions, Lori, we understand are not happening in a vacuum, right? The world is watching. You've got Venezuela calling these actions violations of its sovereignty, potential acts of war. We're trying to define the terms here. So legally, when does a targeted strike become a violation of state sovereignty in this case?
Well, from the facts that we have available, the strikes are taking place in international waters. So they're not within Venezuela's territory or territorial waters. That matters in this case. If, in fact, the U.S. were to carry out strikes on the territory of Venezuela or in Venezuelan waters, as you know, we've seen some reports that maybe that's being considered, that would clearly be a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty. Here, the vessels don't appear to be flagged to any state. That helps us understand whether they belong to a state. So I don't think we have necessarily sovereignty issues here in that respect. But what we do have is, killing of people. And I'm not sure we know who those people are. We don't have a lot of facts about that, or necessarily what's being carried in those boats, where those boats are going. There's a lot of unknowns here that would really help put together some of the analysis. But I think the bottom line is there's no basis in international law for calling this an armed conflict. There's no basis in international law for targeting vessels when we have another method that is perfectly effective to stop them from transiting the drugs that seem to be the problem at the base of this whole scenario.
And it doesn't seem, Lori, as though, these strikes are going to stop cold turkey here. You talked about still several unknowns on the table. What obligations does the U.S. have to release those details and information about these strikes as it concerns these vessels here?
Well, I think the immediate place in which we're going to see more information or calls for more information is in the halls of Congress. And Congress has an important role to play here. It is where most of the war powers that are set out in the Constitution reside. The president, of course, is commander in chief, but Congress has most of the powers with respect to war. And I think what we're seeing in these calls for oversight and for hearings is Congress beginning to step into the role that it needs to be playing in that respect. I think we're going to see a lot more there than we're going to see in the international community, but we have seen a number of U.S. allies, the United Kingdom in particular, saying they're not going to share information that they're gathering through their intelligence channels because they don't want to be tied to, involved in any way in these strikes that they see as legally problematic, that most commentators, most analysts in the discourse are saying are legally problematic. And so we're seeing through the ordinary course of how states interact with each other, we are seeing pushback in that respect as well.
Lori Blaine, clinical professor of law at Emory University. We'll see how all of this develops and unfolds and see if this escalates at all. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You are watching The Take. We're going to be right back. The Trump administration is ramping up immigration enforcement in two major cities, with those from Somalia in its sights. This comes one day after the president lobbed attacks, including at a Somali-born member of Congress. Joining us now is NBC's Tracy Wilkins in Washington. Tracy, good to have you with us.
Good morning, Joe.
If you could first, Tracy, touch on the two areas where these actions are taking place and if we've heard reaction from local officials so far.
Well, the Trump administration is launching new immigration raids in New Orleans and Minnesota's Twin Cities, where Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, have already been making arrests. Some city leaders are saying ICE is not wanted. The amped up show of force coming just a day after President Trump announced the crackdown and attacked Somalis in particular. The Twin Cities has one of the largest concentrated Somali populations in the country.
Yeah, so Tracy, why is the White House making this move now, and what does it hope to accomplish?
Well, it's not completely clear why now, although the president has frequently cited a $300 million fraud scandal that unfolded during the pandemic. A majority of the estimated 70 people involved were Somali, according to federal prosecutors, who also say many have pleaded guilty and are serving time. They also say there are new prosecutions that are on the way coming soon. It's important to note that there were similar schemes and prosecutions across the country for people who defrauded the government during COVID. A senior law enforcement source tells NBC News ICE is not targeting Somalis, but may arrest some they say violated immigration law. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement that those targeted in New Orleans include people released after being arrested for home invasion, armed robbery, grand theft auto, and rape.
Yeah, so Tracy, as we said, with these raids ongoing here, especially honed in on the Twin Cities there in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the president also tossed barbs at Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. What did the president say, and has there been any fallout from those remarks?
Yeah, President Trump disparaged the Somali American Congresswoman, calling Omar garbage, and suggested she go back to where she came from. The Democratic Congresswoman from Minnesota, who has served in Congress since 2019, fired back, saying, quote, "The president's obsession with me and the Somali community is really unhealthy and creepy." In Washington, I'm Tracy Wilkins. Joe, back to you.
Yeah, Tracy, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Plenty more in store for you here. You are watching The Take. You are watching The Take. I'm Joe Ripley in for Chesley McNeil as we take a beautiful view there of Midtown Atlanta from our Midtown Georgia Tech Skycam. You can see it's mostly cloudy right now. A few spotty showers expected today. You can expect a high of 50 degrees as well. Nice, cool, and comfortable there. For tonight, that's when that rain, we're told, it's going to move in with temperatures reaching down into the low 40s. Tomorrow, hope you can join us at one of 5 locations across Metro Atlanta for our Canathon, though you might want to bring a raincoat or an umbrella because rain is expected likely in the morning hours. That will taper off, though, through the afternoon with a high in the upper 40s. On Saturday, it'll be mostly cloudy with a few showers, a high of 49 degrees. So enjoy this dry-like weather while it lasts, because that rain is expected to move in across North Georgia as soon as this evening. Rain going to be sticking around with us through Friday. And so we hope that you will once again be able to join us for our 43rd annual Canathon. Open enrollment is underway, but millions of Americans are now facing the prospect of much higher health insurance costs come 2026. A new White House proposal aims to extend subsidies under the Affordable Care Act for 2 more years, but Congress won't vote until mid-December. And if those tax credits do expire, families here in Georgia could see their premiums jump by thousands of dollars. New national data from the nonprofit group Blood Cancer United says more than 22 million Americans could face major premium hikes or lose health insurance altogether if ACA tax credits expire. An individual earning $28,000 a year would see annual premiums rise from about $325 to more than $1,500 without the subsidy. Families and older adults would face steep increases from roughly $3,400 more for a family of 4 to more than $22,000 for a 60-year-old couple. Let's dive deeper now with Katie Berge, Senior Director at Blood Cancer United. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you for having me this morning. Pleasure to be with you.
Yes, thank you so much. Let's start here, Katie, with the big picture. What happens on January 1st if Congress does not extend these ACA subsidies?
Premiums will spike for millions of Americans, including almost 1.5 million people in Georgia, right? And so we know that as an organization representing people with serious and chronic conditions like cancer, that going without health insurance is not a viable path forward. And so it's essential that Congress take action, and take action now, to extend this financial lifeline.
Katie, we understand more than 22 million Americans are at risk next year. Who gets hit first and hardest? Parents, seniors, small business owners?
Yes, the answer is yes, all of the above. For small business owners, the Affordable Care Act has been the only way that they can get high quality access to coverage. For people who are early retirees or just under Medicare eligibility, that's also them. We also know that people have families, right? And if a parent goes uninsured, it is almost twice as likely that the patient or that the child will go uninsured. So access to high quality health care is not something that Americans can afford to go without.
Concerning topics for sure, Katie. That'll get your blood pressure up. When you're talking about tariffs, inflation, families are already stretched by groceries, housing, and child care costs. So how do you see these health care premium increases compounding all that financial strain?
Right. You know, the thing about it is like none of us know when we're going to be sick, and we are already in a cost crisis, right? And so Having insurance that backs you up, not only for your health, but protects your finances is really critical. And for cancer patients, the stakes are even higher. There is no such thing as a self-pay cancer patient, and losing this lifeline will force people to go without that care and put them into medical debt. We feel very strongly that everyone should have access to high quality and affordable healthcare that meets their needs.
Yeah, there are so many people, Katie, who rely on these credits, these subsidies. What should they be doing right now while Washington debates the future?
Well, first of all, Blood Cancer United encourages everybody to enroll in insurance that meets their healthcare needs. Second of all, it is time to raise your voice. Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, need to be encouraged to come to the table and cut a deal, and that includes the president. So right now, we would encourage every one of your listeners who has been impacted by this or knows somebody who has been impacted by this to reach out to their congressional delegation. You can do that by visiting americanscovered.org and take action there.
You know, during this debate here in Washington, Katie, there are so many who are trying to figure out what the future does look like for these subsidies. If Congress doesn't act, what are the next steps here?
I mean, if Congress doesn't act, American families are going to be forced into impossible decisions. For cancer patients, this means fewer doctor visits, fewer treatments, and fewer hours with loved ones. And that's really not a tenable choice for people or anyone living with a chronic or serious illness. So, I'm an optimist here. I think that there's a path forward, but it doesn't go without buy-in and accountability.
What are the chances, realistically, Katie, that a deal gets done here in December? We get a vote. We've seen a federal shutdown, the refusal of lawmakers to come together and hash this out. What makes you think your optimist self can be fulfilled here and we'll have a resolution?
Because, optimism aside, these are people who rely on insurance. This is the system our government and our country has decided on. Cancer patients can't be left out alone, and I think Congress understands that. Stories about people who are impacted by this are really what will influence the debate moving forward, and people will remember who and when their health care was taken away.
Yeah. Katie Berge, thank you so much for your time. We will see how this plays out. Plenty more in store for you. This is The Take. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Take. New warning signs are out showing that U.S. tariffs are finally hitting home. Companies across multiple sectors say rising import costs and shrinking margins could force them to cut jobs or freeze hiring heading into 2026. It's a potential economic whiplash from a policy meant to boost American workers. We want to bring in friend of the show, financial expert Andrew Poulos, to break down what this means for businesses and families. Andrew, good to see you.
Joe, good morning. Good to see you. So, what this means is we're seeing more layoffs than we expect. And some folks are expecting 2026 to be a little bit tougher than 2025. But time will tell what's going to happen as we go into the new year.
We didn't have numbers for a while during the federal government shutdown, Andrew. But when you look at the data now, we're getting a closer look. How significant is this delayed tariff impact now on business operations?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely significant, Joe. I mean, we're looking at, numbers that we missed in October, where we headed. I mean, we saw Amazon lay off about 30,000 folks in October, and probably more to come from other big corporations. The big thing that's of concern is small businesses, basically, at this point, and we're starting to see that they're not hiring, and they're sort of tapering off and being very cautious. A lot of it may be due to tariffs.
Yeah, you touched on it there. Are we talking isolated industries, in particular tech sector, healthcare, manufacturing, or could this ripple out across the broader economy?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly can. I think one of the things that could help, hopefully, in 2026 is if we see interest rates come down. Once we get probably into February, March, and we get a new Fed chair, it's very likely that the Trump administration is going to begin to cut rates. Maybe that will help offset some of the possible recessionary factors that we're seeing right now. But, again, that's all speculation, and time will tell what's going to happen. But I think until small businesses get comfortable that we're really not in a recession.
Yeah, Andrew, so a lot of companies right now, they're saying they are reevaluating headcount for next year amid all of this financial turmoil. What are the triggers necessarily that could push a business to reduce staff or freeze hiring?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to, just we'll see how it plays out, but I think they're basically just on a slow path, and they're going to basically just take their time and slow walk things to see pretty much if it warrants them to start hiring. But I don't think anything like that's probably going to happen until latter part of 2026, maybe in the summertime, once we see what happens with the interest rates. I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for.
Yeah, Andrew, we're talking big picture here, but we're talking layoffs here. These are folks' livelihoods, their families here. How do you expect that the ripple effect from, massive layoffs may have, not just on the economy here, but, people's personal lives?
Well, listen, if you're someone who's getting laid off, I mean, it's challenging, right? Where do you come up with money to support your household? If you have a mortgage, if you have rent, those are serious concerns and serious issues pretty much. I think that we're going to have, some difficult times, not just here in Georgia, but across the country as people begin to get laid off. I mean, we've seen time and time again this year where people have been laid off. They've been looking for a job for, 3, 6, 9 months, and they're still to find anything that they can get. And they're really not looking anything specific. They're just looking for a job to make ends meet. So that's concerning. I think we're going to probably potentially see more of that as we go along.
That is interesting to note, Andrew, because you mentioned earlier the new Fed chair who will take office after Chair Powell leaves next May. They've got that dual mandate there of lowering inflation or keeping inflation in check, but also the labor market. Is this something that you feel one may outweigh the other heading into next year, and how does that really impact the job market?
I mean, it's going to be interesting, first of all, to see who the new Fed chair is going to be, right? We know that we have a new Fed chair coming in. I can almost certainly tell you that we're probably going to see some aggressive rate cuts because that's what the Trump administration wants. But as far as hiring and what's going to happen, that's just going to be key to see what really happens. I'm very hesitant to say that we're going to have just a robust hiring spree or robust hiring growth in 2026 when we're starting to see over 1.1 million layoffs this year. So I think we should plan for some sort of slow growth 26. Maybe that some of these tax cuts that we're also going to start seeing for 26 will kick in a little bit more than we're expected, and that sort of will counterbalance some of the layoffs that we're seeing. But this is all kind of very fluid right now because we've got so many moving parts economically as we speak.
Yeah, a couple of months away now from tax season. Financial expert Andrew Poulos, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
You are watching The Take. We'll be right back. Welcome back into The Take. You know them for buying in bulk at steep discounts, but right now, Costco is taking the extraordinary step of suing the federal government over the Trump-era tariffs, arguing the White House overstepped its emergency powers. And with the Supreme Court now weighing the legality of those tariffs, the outcome could reshape everything from import prices to presidential authority. Time for a deep dive now on this with attorney and legal analyst Nadine Jones. Nadine, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nadine, how unusual is this? You got a major retailer like Costco suing over tariffs tied to presidential emergency powers.
What Costco's really doing is putting a mark in time. So it's anticipating that the Supreme Court is going to render the IEEPA tariffs unlawful. And if it does so, if the Supreme Court does so, Costco wants to be in a position to then seek a refund from Customs, Border and Protection. So that's really what the lawsuit is about. It certainly agrees with plaintiffs in the VOS selections and learning resources case that IEEPA does not authorize the imposition of tariffs. But what it's really doing with the present case that it filed, it's tolling it's putting a stop in time to allow it the opportunity to seek a refund.
So what exactly?
That's not too technical.
Yeah. What exactly, Nadine, does Costco need to prove to try and reclaim some of these tariff payments?
Well, it's trying to wait out the clock. So we expect the Supreme Court to render a decision June of 2026. I actually think it's going to be sooner than that, but let's say it's on schedule to render its decision June of 2026. Costco's window to challenge the tariffs imposed by Customs closes just at that time. So it's gauging its odds against first of all, a strike down of the IEEPA Liberation Day tariffs by the Supreme Court? And then does the window of opportunity exist for it to then seek a refund from customs? So it's playing the clock, so to speak. So that's why they filed this lawsuit.
As the year rolled on, Nadine, we saw the Trump administration roll back some of these tariffs on certain products. How do you think that might weigh on this case?
You know, I'm not so sure it will help this case, because what it shows is how nimble and fluid and uncertain the imposition of tariffs are under IEEPA. There are other statutes that make it a little bit more rigid, actually maybe a lot more rigid, and the president wouldn't have the power to just one day say it's 25% tariffs, another day say it's 2%, another day say it's 125%. IEEPA is wide discretion to the president, wide discretion, and that's why the challenge is it wasn't intended to be used for tariffs, and we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say about that.
This could have massive implications beyond Costco if the retailer is able to win this case. What would that mean for prices on the shelves and ultimately for consumers?
Well, it's hard to say, because who's to say if Costco or other retailers were to get massive refunds in the form of millions or billions of dollars, maybe millions of dollars? Who's to say the consumer is going to benefit from that? I don't know. I don't know what Costco or other retailers will do. They might push it down. They might not. Maybe it'll depend on how much of the cost of imports they actually embedded in the consumer price. Some of these importers have been eating the cost. They've been eating it and not passing it down. So they might decide, look, we've been eating the cost, now we get the money back, we're going to keep the money. But it's hard to say if consumers will benefit in the immediacy of a refund.
Eyeing a June Supreme Court decision in this one, possibly sooner. Nadine Jones, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, let us give you a quick check of the weather outside. You can see mostly cloudy there from our DeKalb County camera looking in at the city of Atlanta. Beautiful day. It won't stay dry for long, though. That rain moving in later tonight will stick around for Friday. As we close out 2025, new numbers from ADP show wages here in Georgia are still trending upward and slightly faster than the national average. Its Pay Insights report for November shows job stayers here saw a nearly 5% bump over the last year, with the state ranking 20th in the country for wage growth. ADP sets the median annual salary for Georgia job stayers in November at close to $54,000, with the sectors seeing the strongest year-over-year wage gains in finance, manufacturing, and hospitality. Let's go inside the numbers now with ADP lead data scientist Liv Wang. Liv, welcome.
Thank you.
Liv, do you see anything unique in Georgia's labor market that's driving this growth?
Yes, let me start with the national number. We are tracking over 15 million pay change observations across the country. Nationally, for job stayers who have worked for the same employer as 12 months earlier, annual pay growth was 4.4% in November. Georgia's number is higher. It's also higher than most of its neighboring states. And its pay growth has been increasing while the national number has been slowing since the beginning of this year. Earlier government number also showed that Georgia had a much lower unemployment rate than the nationals, indicating a strong local job market.
So when you live behind that 4.6% increase, what's actually driving these wages up?
We don't currently break out the industry number on state level, but nationally, the sectors of information, manufacturing, financial activities have the highest growth pace, and the sectors with the highest pay growth rate is manufacturing with 4.8 growth, financial activities with 5.2 growth, and leisure and hospitality with 4.5% growth.
We have talked previously with other guests here on The Take about the concern over inflation, rising costs of living. Are companies still using these pay increases, these wage increases, to retain talent, Liv, or has that strategy slowed?
It is slowed, but it is still very important to compete for the talent. So the company, if they want to retain their talent, they have to keep an eye on those benchmark numbers.
Yeah, you gotta have to decide here in the labor market here. Do I stay here for maybe a little less pay or take the risk of going somewhere to make a little bit more money? Are there any industries, Liv, showing early warning signs of decline?
Almost all the industry in the national level are slowing, but the premium of changing jobs still exists for switching. There's a 4.4% pay growth for job stayers versus 6.3% for job changers. But since the wage growth has been cooling, the gap has narrowed to only 1.9 percentage points difference, which is the lowest since the report started in 2020.
With that trend then slowing down, Liv, do you see any signs of layoffs or hiring freezes in the future?
Yeah, the latest ADP National Employment Report showing in November nationally it shed 33,000 jobs, and in the second half of 2025, the cumulative change of the job was flat.
Interesting. Liv, I'll leave you on this. What advice would you give anybody looking for a job next year?
It is very important to keep an eye on the benchmarks within your demographic group, industry area, business size. ADP Pay Insights with those information can be very helpful to find where you stand and where the opportunities are. It is important to keep talking to your employers about your expectation and facilitate transparency. Setting up a career roadmap that everyone is aligned on can be a powerful way to set yourself up for future success within your organization.
All right, good advice. Liv Wong with ADP. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
You're watching The Take. We'll have more in just a bit. Welcome back to The Take. The major markets soared yesterday as optimism over a potential interest rate cut by the Fed lifted investor mood. CNN's Maribel Hebert joins us now from the NASDAQ market site there in New York City. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe.
Yeah, so Maribel, how are we out of the gates now this Thursday?
Joe, investors are looking at weekly jobless claims ending November 29th, which dropped by 27,000 to a three-year low. That figure is from the Labor Department, slowly returning to regular reporting after the shutdown. Now, new unemployment filings total around 191,000. The November jobs report is still delayed until December 16th, and some October data was canceled entirely. Private payroll company ADP reports that 32,000 private sector jobs were lost last month, and softer job numbers can ease wage pressure, which the Fed watches closely. It's kind of, Joe, like bad news equals good news. The board meets next month to discuss another possible interest rate cut by year's end. Let's see how the market's moving right now. It looks like we are a little bit in the green, a little bit in the red. The Dow up about 14 points, NASDAQ down 14, the S&P up 2, Joe.
Yeah, mixed morning to start this Thursday, Maribel. The latest move on fuel economy rules is stirring debate, made some headlines. It sounds like it could reshape how we think about cars and climate.
Well, the Trump administration wants to roll back current fuel economy standards for passenger vehicles. The corporate average fuel economy standards were enacted in 1975, and they've been tightened over the years and now call for about 50 miles per gallon by 2031. Now, yesterday, President Trump proposed lowering that target to 34 miles per gallon over the same period. Several automakers say the lower standard would make it easier to build more affordable vehicles and compete against the EV market. The American Petroleum Institute has also lobbied against the standard, contending it's designed to phase out gas and diesel vehicles, Joe.
Yeah, especially considering that we lost that EV tax credit recently. All right, Maribel, we got a big recall alert out today. It hits right into our snack time, too. Ritz crackers, and this includes Georgia.
Joe, you got to be careful what you open here. Ritz is recalling 70 cases of peanut butter sandwich crackers in multiple states over a potential allergy risk. The company says the crackers are made by manufacturer Mondelez Global. It came in 20-count packages, so the boxes inside are said to be mislabeled as cheese crackers, which could pose a peanut allergy risk to consumers. The outer cartons are said to be labeled correctly, indicating that the product contains peanuts. Georgia is among the 8 states affected by this recall, but no injuries have been reported so far. Joe, full batch details are on the FDA's website.
Yeah, we'll want to watch out for that, especially for those with those nut allergies. Finally, from Earth to the moon and back again, lunar dust might soon be powering devices here on the ground, Maribel?
Jay, Joe, it's not Tang, okay? Private space exploration company Blue Origin, it's unveiled this device that it says turns this moon dust into energy. The moon vacuum debuted yesterday at Amazon's reInvent 2025 conference in Las Vegas. Built by AI startup is Tariff Digital. Current lunar missions are typically restricted to specific windows of optimum light and temperatures on the moon's surface. Blue Origin says the new device could expand those timeframes by converting moon dust into a longer lasting power source. His Tariff CEO described it as like vacuuming at home, but creating your own electricity while you do it. The startup already has contracts with the U.S. government and others like Lockheed Martin, where it's working on an experimental unmanned aircraft. Joe, imagine that moon dust tech scaled up. The same processing power a landing one day could, in theory, power the massive square footage of today's AI data centers. Imagine that. It's not that wild a leap.
Wow. I need to dust off my moon boots or something, Maribel. This sounds like something straight out of, as Fergie would say, 3000
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Yes, absolutely. Maribel Iber, thank you so much for your time.
You got it.
All right, we'll be right back. You're watching The Take. Rough news for students in the Peach State who are searching for financial aid to pay for college. A new report shows Georgia relies almost entirely on merit-based scholarships, leaving low-income, rural, and first-generation students with widening gaps in college access. The State Senate Study Committee on Higher Education Affordability says just 1% of aid is need-based. This is far below the 74% national figure. The report shows the most impacted groups: Black, rural, low-income, and first-generation students. And Georgia is one of 2 states without a comprehensive need-based aid program. So let's find out what's going on now with Ashley Young, Senior Education Policy Analyst for the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. Good to see you again, Ashley.
Hi, Joe. Good morning.
So when you look at this report, Ashley, what stands out to you as the clearest signal that Georgia's financial aid system simply is not meeting students where they are?
Yeah, so Georgia is, again, as you mentioned, one of 2 states that does not have need-based aid. One of the major findings that we were able to see during this Senate Study Committee is that Georgia remains consistently one of the states that has the lowest tuition and fees rate. However, we are 3rd in the nation behind Washington, D.C. and Maryland for student loan debt per borrower. So when we think about that gap and we try to understand and figure out how this could be, we are understanding that there is a major disinvestment in need-based financial aid, which helps many students access college.
Ashley, walk us through the scale of this affordability gap. What does it actually look like for a Georgia family just trying to send their kids to college right now?
Absolutely. We have seen exponential increases in college costs over the last few years. There are generally 2 ways in which our state can provide funding for students. That's through, of course, the state funding formula, and that's generally for our public colleges like Technical College System of Georgia and the University System of Georgia. And then we have direct aid to the students, say like a Hope Scholarship or hopefully in the future a need-based aid scholarship. And so what we're finding is students are having to work multiple jobs, and even students who are receiving the Pell Grant and even receiving Hope Scholarship are still on average, not having that gap filled, and they have what we call unmet need, and are still having to work multiple jobs, long hours, which actually delays, their graduation completion time. So this would be a major transformative investment in helping all Georgia students not only enroll, but persist and graduate from college.
Yeah, it's a wonder, Ashley, those targeted communities, impacted communities, can keep up academically as they're having to juggle so much in their personal and financial lives as well. Are there certain communities or regions here in Georgia falling further behind others?
For sure. Many students from rural areas, many students who are not able to access advanced placement courses, who are struggling to get SAT, ACT preparation, to be competitive for standardized tests, and of course, racially marginalized students, right? So Black students hold the most debt in the university system of Georgia. As a matter of fact, they actually account for about 44% of the students who are taking out loans, but only about 25% of the students in the university system of Georgia. So to see that Black students are accounting for almost half of the students who are taking out debt, but only accounting for about a quarter of the students, shows these disproportionate impact on African American students. We also see this with Hispanic and Latinx students as well. So students of color, students who are financially marginalized, and certainly our rural students would benefit greatly from a need-based aid program in Georgia.
Ashley, let's take this concept off of paper and put it into practice here. What would a comprehensive, renewable, need-based grant look like here in Georgia?
That is such a great question, Joe. I've been working on this for many years, so I'm excited to share. This would look like renewable funding. So we would be investing in students in their first year as a first-year college student. So as they're enrolling, this helps to increase students' confidence in their self-efficacy that they can actually enroll and make this a dream come true. We are looking at, again, initial, renewable. We are making sure that students who have the most need, so this would be based on a student aid index, which is essentially a formula to determine Pell Grant eligibility. So we would be targeting our most financial needy students. Eligible students would be able to, again, straight out of high school, be able to access this need-based financial aid. And it would also, again, be open to any student who qualifies based on their student aid index. Again, renewable at the first time of enrollment.
You've done the research, you've got the data, done the report. Ashley, next month, the legislature is back in session. How do you believe state lawmakers will take this data into consideration? Do you believe real change will come about?
I do believe this is a step in the right direction. Joe, I'm sure you're aware of this, but it takes time for this magnitude of a shift in the financial aid system. But I think we have done a major job in terms of working with pivotal players such as Senator Max Burns, who is chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, who was also on the Senate Study Committee. Also, Madam Chair, Senator Nan Orrock, who's a leader in the Democratic Party here in Georgia. And so we've got some pretty pivotal players that see the vision and that unanimously adopted this report. And so our next step is to really ensure that we are having critical, important conversations with the governor's office to ensure that we have the executive leadership from our governor, and governor and their staff, and just continuing to lobby and advocate and share those student stories to ensure that the General Assembly is on board with this very needed policy change.
Ashley Young with the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, thank you so much. The Final Take is next. All right, before we go, here's my final take. The Georgia Bulldogs and Alabama Crimson Tide are going to play in their 5th SEC championship game this Saturday. Alabama is 4-0 in that stretch. The Tide have dominated the Dogs in recent years, winning 10 of the last 11 games overall against the Dogs. That lone win for Georgia, though, was a big one. A natty back in 2021. You can call it a curse. The monkey on Georgia's back. All I know is this Georgia alum wants to see a change. And a change means beating Alabama for the SEC's top prize. A change means avenging the Dogs' only loss this season and likely washing the Tide out of the playoff picture. Alabama's been in 8 college football playoffs since the CFP era began in 2014. That's the most of any team. The Dogs' last win against the Tide earned them their first national title in 41 years. So the Dogs could do a lot with a big win. That is my final take. Thanks for joining us here on The Take.